Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I am your ever living Shorty, and today we're going to talk about Free For All from Patrick Hovarth, or Horvath, should I say. And this is one that I've been looking forward to for a couple of reasons. Number one, it should be fairly obvious, because if you're watching a YouTube video involving a Yorkshireman talking about comic books very quickly for 5 minutes, you'll probably know that Patrick Horvath was the creator, artist, and writer of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. Absolutely amazing horror comic book came out last year, nominated for an Eisner, absolutely deserved it. It really is one of the best comic books I've read in a while, specifically within the horror genre. This comic book is actually one that he'd created before that, but obviously before he had the industry clout that he does now. Since he's done, like, his Beneath the Trees, there's been, like, a couple of short stories I think he's done for a couple of anthologies, but I've still been waiting for, like, the next big thing he's going to do. This is kind of a nice one to fill the gap, so very much happy to have it. Secondly, conceptually, it's exactly the kind of comic book I like. I mean, last night I went to watch a Bloodywood gig, very much anarchist punk, well, anarchist heavy metal, I suppose, and now a full-on anti-capitalist comic book. It feels like a very good day for me. I want to talk anti-capitalism. Yeah, this is very much about redistribution of wealth. It's a political book through and through, and as Horvath himself says, all art is inherently political, whether you intend it or not, because it is a product of the time it's written in. This is 100% that. And I'm going to tell you what the base concept for it is, because it feels like it's worth talking about this. If you'd rather not know it before you read the comic book, absolutely understand. Turn this video off right now, go and find the comic book, it's great. But the concept is exactly the kind of thing I'd enjoy reading, just to see, as a thought experiment, like how to deal with wealth distribution in a hyper-capitalist kind of era, where there is billionaires, even trillionaires, maybe even quadrillionaires or quintillionaires. I never counted the amount of digits and the amount of money moving around in this comic book. But the idea being, once you pass a certain wealth threshold, probably billions or above, you enter into a lottery, and if your number is called, you have 2 weeks to give half of your money to a welfare fund, which will go to what most people consider basic human rights necessities, you know, making sure people are housed, have access to education, healthcare and food and all that kind of thing, some kind of universal basic income, I would presume. And you keep the other half, which will still be more money than any one person could ever spend in multiple lifetimes. And you'd think most exceptionally wealthy people would be like, yeah, cool, fine, I've still got loads of money. But some people weren't happy about that, so they're offered a choice. Defend your money to the death. Basically, gladiatorial combat between billionaires and trillionaires. Whoever survives gets to keep their money. They don't get any money from the guy they've killed, or the person they've killed. It just means all of that money goes to the public good instead of just half of it. Now, mathematically and morally and ethically, I'm like, yeah, cool, I like this. But within the world, there are people protesting it, and I kind of like the idea that this may involve some people who are like, well, you know, any human cruelty is bad, but almost certainly is more likely people who, as a much better educated person once said, the reason Americans are so in favour of not taxing the rich is not only because those are poor, just temporarily embarrassed millionaires, and I'm obviously paraphrasing there. And I like the idea that these people might still exist in this world to be like, well, you know, one day I might end up with billions of dollars, and I certainly wouldn't want to have to defend it to the death. But some billionaires, trillionaires, quadrillionaires would, because they see it as their right, and if they go into a combat situation, they're like, well, no, I have earned this money, I deserve to have it, so surely I deserve to win. And then one of them will die. This comic book is about two individuals within this world, an ex-husband and wife, who basically the husband totally stiffed the wife out of a considerable amount of money because he cared more about winning the money than anything else, and he is now a renowned gladiator, having won 21 matches in a row, so he kept all of his money, and then his ex-wife gets picked to face him in the next one, and it becomes a story of this. So on top of all this really nice anti-capitalist stuff, which deals with ethics of being a billionaire, which is kind of impossible, and I admit there's probably some people watching who might be like, oh yes, but what about Taylor Swift? I'll happily discuss Taylor Swift's ethics in the comments, but this is a video about comic books. So when we are dealing with it, we get to see not just how bad it is that they're having to fight each other, but also that changes the internal rules of logic for them. They already have done terrible things, no such thing as an ethical billionaire. They've already taken advantage of people. If they're now told, well, to maintain it, you have to go and murder somebody, it's probably going to flick a switch in the head. So at one point, we literally see one of them just drown a chipmunk. It goes to pretty dark places, but it also has some fantastic action sequences. The gladiatorial combat is brilliant. If I was going to give it any criticism whatsoever, and this is a very, very minor criticism, it is not quite as good artwork as people might expect, because this was previous in his career. He has become better, and it is perfectly obvious when you go and check out how good Beneath the Trees is, that this isn't quite up to it. And I say that, like, quite. It is a minor little thing. There's some stuff I genuinely love about how it looks. He still has a very nice use of form and plays around with ideas of artwork in very, very inventive ways that add to story and characterization. I think if it was a little bit longer, I'd quite like to see a little bit more of characterization. But again, that's a very minor thing. This is specifically on purpose to be a very short, self-contained little one-shot, and it does a fantastic job of it. That's it for me for now, though. Until I see you all again, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye!